Belle Gunness, later infamous as Hell's Belle, entered the world in 1859 within the picturesque Norwegian municipality of Selbu, nestled along the enchanting shores of Lake Selbusjen. She emerged as the eighth and final offspring of Paul and Berit Storseth. Information regarding her early life remains somewhat elusive. According to numerous accounts, Brunhilde Paulstetter Storseth, her given name at birth, hailed from a family with a stonemason heritage known for robust health. Belle appeared to inherit her father's imposing stature, standing tall at over 180 centimeters and boasting a weight below 100 kilograms. Consequently, her remarkable strength surpassed that of most men. Life in Norway. As early as the age of 13 or 14, Brunhilde assumed her responsibilities alongside other women, tending to tasks such as milking cattle, herding, and harvesting hay. Her unwavering dedication to these chores stemmed from a singular aspiration to amass sufficient funds for her journey to New York. One frequently recounted tale from her youth revolves around Brunhilde's pregnancy at the age of 17, which resulted from an affair with a married man. Disinclined to father the child, the man resorted to a cruel act during a village dance, causing her to stumble and suffer a miscarriage. According to these accounts, the man evaded legal consequences due to his wealth, a turn of events that seemingly extinguished the kindness within Brunhilde and transformed her into a wholly different individual. Understandably, it came as no surprise when Brunhilde eventually chose to follow in the footsteps of her elder sister, Nellie, who had ventured to America a few years prior. In 1881, at the age of 22, she bid farewell to her family, relinquished her given name, and set her sights on Chicago, embarking on a new chapter in her life. The beginning of her life in America. Brunhilde adopted the enchanting name Belle, and within a matter of months, she secured employment as a maid within the household of affluent Americans. Approximately 2 years later, her path intersected with another Norwegian immigrant by the name of Mads Albert Sorensen, and by 1884, Belle had entered into wedlock with him. Observers attested that the newlyweds enjoyed a harmonious relationship, resembling a striking and handsome couple. In pursuit of their dreams, they ventured into the realm of culinary entrepreneurship, establishing a pastry shop, a venture that showcased Belle's culinary talents. Regrettably, their American clientele failed to appreciate her baked delicacies, causing the business to falter. In a peculiar twist of fate, a year later, their establishment succumbed to a mysterious fire, subsequently allowing Mads and Belle to claim a substantial insurance settlement. First husband and children. With the funds acquired, the couple made a significant purchase, acquiring a spacious home where they would reside for the ensuing 15 years. Over the course of their union, Belle and Mads welcomed 4 children into the world, although only Myrtle and Lucy, their daughters, managed to survive the perils of infancy, a sadly common occurrence during the 19th century. Despite this, whispers circulated among the neighbors, suggesting that Belle had never experienced pregnancy firsthand, as none of them had ever witnessed her expecting a child. Furthermore, both of her infants who passed away were insured for substantial sums of money, yet such discussions remained largely unspoken. Accusing a mother of such a heinous act appeared far-fetched. As documented in the 1900 census, Myrtle was 3 years old, and Lucy was 1 year old. In addition to their 2 biological children, the family included a 10-year-old adopted girl named Jenny Olsen, although the census recorded a different name, Morgan Couch, which they may have later altered. Tragedy struck in that same year of 1900 when Mads Sorensen, known for his robust health, inexplicably fell fatally ill and passed away suddenly. The initial examination of his remains by a physician suggested strychnine poisoning as the cause, although Mads's longtime attending doctor proposed heart disease as the culprit, neglecting even to conduct an autopsy. This raised eyebrows, especially given that the doctor subsequently made multiple visits to the widow, ostensibly for the purpose of providing comfort. Adding to the unexpected string of events, it transpired that Mads had life insurance policies in place. It is often recounted that he passed away on July 30th, the precise day when the first policy had not yet lapsed, while the second policy had taken effect, meaning he was doubly insured. This stroke of fortune led Belle to receive a substantial payout of $8,500, a windfall she chose to employ in the acquisition of a farm in LaPorte, Indiana. Moving to Indiana. As Belle prepared to depart from Chicago, a fateful encounter unfolded when she unexpectedly crossed paths with another Norwegian soul, Peter Gunness. Both were widowed, each with 2 daughters, and the weight of their shared grief forged an unbreakable bond. Thus, when Belle embarked for Indiana, Peter found himself unexpectedly ensnared by love and resolved to follow her. The residence Belle selected upon her arrival bore an infamous reputation within the neighborhood. It was known as Mattie Altic's Haven. Mattie Altic had once transformed this abode into a brothel, a den shrouded in protection from Chicago's influential politicians and criminal figures. This establishment, colloquially known as the Farm, catered to clandestine visits by respectable businessmen from the city. Whispers also circulated, suggesting darker undertakings, including allegations of human trafficking and heinous crimes. The precise allure of this property to Belle remains a mystery. Perhaps it was the wealth of outbuildings, which she promptly insured. Predictably, a few months later, both the carriage barn and the dock mysteriously succumbed to flames, and once more, the widow found herself well endowed by insurance proceeds. Another advantage of the house's notorious history was its attractively reduced price, as Belle acquired it for a fraction of its appraised value. Soon, Peter joined her, and together, they set their sights on transforming the former brothel into a thriving pig farm. In the end, their vision bore fruit, resulting in the establishment of a prosperous farm that promised to yield a substantial income in the future. Second marriage. On April 1, 1902, Peter and Belle Gunness exchanged vows in matrimony, and just a week later, a tragic incident occurred, the untimely passing of the groom's young daughter. This unfortunate event transpired while Peter was away from home, and regrettably, no inquiry was launched to probe the child's demise. It was simply attributed to a tragic accident. His sorrowful occurrence was eclipsed less than 8 months later by the sudden demise of Peter himself. Unlike the enigmatic circumstances surrounding Belle's first husband, this time, there appeared to be no mystery. Peter had sustained a severe blow to the head. Belle maintained it was the result of a mishap while her husband attempted to retrieve a hefty industrial meat grinder from a high shelf, which tragically fell and caused his immediate demise. Local residents found this explanation dubious, deeming it implausible for a death to occur under such absurd circumstances. The combination of these suspicions, Belle's poor reputation, her irascible temperament, and her unfriendliness led to her unpopularity in the town. Her conduct even deterred customers from her butcher shop, where she served as a clerk. In response to these concerns, the local coroner initiated an inquiry into Peter's demise. However, the investigation failed to unearth any concrete evidence of foul play. This somewhat cleared Belle's reputation, and she received a payout of $3,000, the insured amount for her deceased spouse. In 1903, Belle gave birth to a son, whom she named Peter in honor of the boy's late father. As for Peter's second daughter, she found refuge under the care of her uncle, departing from the infamous haven of Mattie Altic. In search of love. Twice widowed Belle realized that managing the farm on her own was quite a challenge. Consequently, she sought the assistance of a man named Frank Lamford to help her oversee the farm's operations. However, without a husband, Belle found herself feeling lonely and embarked on a quest to find love once more. But this time, she took a more straightforward approach. She placed an advertisement in various Chicago newspapers with the following message. A charming widow, the proprietor of a spacious farm in one of the finest corners of LaPorte County, Indiana, seeks an introduction to a prosperous gentleman for a union of destinies. Written responses will be given consideration only if the sender is amenable to arranging a visit. This advertisement piqued the interest of numerous eligible bachelors, and soon Belle received numerous correspondences. She responded to them by indicating her willingness to enter into matrimony with someone who could alleviate the farm's supposed debts. The first aspiring groom to embark on a personal visit was John Moe, a resident of Minnesota. He arrived with $1,000 which he claimed was intended to settle a debt. However, a week passed without any sign of him, leading people to assume he had changed his mind and departed. Subsequently, other suitors followed, including George Anderson from Missouri. He expressed fondness for the farm but was alarmed to wake up on the third day of his stay at Matty Altic's refuge, finding Belle watching him as he slumbered. Overwhelmed by fear, he promptly fled without seeking a refund of his money. Twice widowed Belle realized that managing the farm on her own was quite a challenge. Consequently, she sought the assistance of a man named Frank Lamford to help her oversee the farm's operations. However, without a husband, Belle found herself feeling lonely and embarked on a quest to find love once more. But this time, she took a more straightforward approach. She placed an advertisement in various Chicago newspapers with the following message: "The charming widow, the proprietor of a spacious farm in one of the finest corners of LaPorte County, Indiana, seeks an introduction to a prosperous gentleman for a union of destinies. Written responses will be given consideration only if the sender is amenable to arranging a visit." This advertisement piqued the interest of numerous eligible bachelors, and soon Belle received numerous correspondences. She responded to them by indicating her willingness to enter into matrimony with someone who could alleviate the farm's supposed debts. The first aspiring groom to embark on a personal visit was John Moe, a resident of Minnesota. He arrived with $1,000 which he claimed was intended to settle a debt. However, a week passed without any sign of him, leading people to assume he had changed his mind and departed. Subsequently, other suitors followed, including George Anderson from Missouri. He expressed fondness for the farm but was alarmed to wake up on the third day of his stay at Matty Altic's refuge, finding Belle watching him as he slumbered. Overwhelmed by fear, he promptly fled without seeking a refund of his money. An unexpected problem. In addition to Belle Gunness' notorious romantic misfortunes, she faced another troubling issue, and its name was Frank Lamford. Frank had been hired as the butler, but by 1907, he had come to realize that he harbored a deep and unrequited love for his employer, Belle. No matter the words or gestures he employed, Belle remained unmoved and unresponsive to Frank's affections. Instead of dissuading him, her lack of reciprocation exacerbated his passion, leading to a troubling consequence. He became intensely jealous of Belle's suitors and began frightening them away from her. Faced with no other recourse, in February 1908, Belle decided to terminate Frank Lamford's employment. However, Frank's ardent heart refused to relent, and he persistently attempted to gain entry into her home on multiple occasions. Each time, he was forcibly repelled by Joe Maxson, whom Belle had hired as a replacement for Lamford. In March of that year, Belle paid a visit to the sheriff and the lawyer, recounting that during their last encounter, Frank had issued a menacing threat. He warned that if Belle did not reciprocate his feelings, he would take her life and set her farm ablaze. Fearing for her safety, Belle dramatically crafted a will, ensuring that all her property would be bequeathed to her children, as she had by then accumulated a considerable fortune. On April 28, Lamford proceeded to act upon his threats. Joe Maxson was abruptly awakened in the dead of night to find the house engulfed in flames. He narrowly managed to escape by leaping from a window just before the roof of the house collapsed. The local fire department arrived to quell the blaze and commenced the grim task of sifting through the charred remnants. Their efforts soon led to the discovery of 4 bodies, 3 children and a woman. In response, the county sheriff promptly ordered the arrest of Frank Lamford. Strange details. Initially, the fire appeared to be a straightforward case. Lamford was arrested and charged with both murder and arson. However, peculiar details soon emerged that cast doubt on the situation. Firstly, the woman's body discovered bore no outward resemblance to Belle Gunness, and curiously, Belle's dentures were found nearby. Secondly, the body's height was approximately 10 centimeters shorter than that of the farm's owner. The situation took an even more suspicious turn with the arrival of a man named Helgelian, who had journeyed from Chicago to LaPorte. His brother, Andrew, had been one of Belle's suitors, and when Andrew failed to return home, Aslay reached out to Belle inquiring about his siblings' safety. Notably, Andrew had brought his entire savings with him in the form of a $2,900 check, which he and Belle jointly cashed at a bank in LaPorte. Despite this, Belle informed Aslay that his brother must have ventured to Norway. However, Helgelian harbored doubts about Belle's account, as Andrew had no intention of leaving America. He expressed his intent to travel to LaPorte and initiate a search for his missing brother. As he began to arrange this journey, he received word of the fire at the Gunness farm, prompting him to promptly journey to LaPorte and share his concerns with Al Smutzer, the county sheriff. The sheriff had already started entertaining suspicions that Belle might have staged her own death. Armed with this additional information, he decided to conduct a more thorough interrogation of Joe Maxson, the sole survivor of the fire. Frightening findings. Joe Maxson had no information about the whereabouts of Andrew Helgelian, but he did recall that a few days before the tragedy, Belle had asked him to move roughly 10 wheelbarrows of soil to the pigsty, ostensibly with the intention of leveling the ground there. This news raised suspicions, prompting Al Smutzer to investigate Belle's pigsty. Upon inspection, several peculiar depressions in the ground became immediately apparent. Summoning a deputy, the sheriff initiated an excavation. By May 3rd, their efforts had yielded the discovery of remains, seemingly belonging to a teenager, likely Jenny Olson. It became evident that she had been deceased for another 2 years, aligning with the time when Gunness had ostensibly sent her off to complete her education in 1906. Proximate to Jenny's remains, additional human bones were unearthed, suggesting that they had been interred in the ground for about 2-3 years. Unfortunately, the police were unable to ascertain the identities of these individuals. Among the discovered remains, Andrew Helgelian was also found, disproving the notion that he had departed for Norway or Valhalla. As they continued their excavation, they uncovered more and more remains. By some estimates, bones from as many as 30-40 human skeletons were unearthed. However, only 7 of Belle's suitors could be positively identified, including John Moe and Old Budsberg. Numerous reports in the newspapers insinuated that there might have been even more victims, as the remains found were primarily near the farm's vicinity. Whether this claim held truth remains uncertain. Regrettably, the true extent of the lives lost at Belle Farm may never be known. Searches and searches. Sheriff Smutzer found it increasingly implausible that Belle could have perpetrated this string of crimes unaided. Consequently, his scrutiny shifted towards Frank Lamfer. A search of Lamfer's residence yielded a startling discovery. Frank had retained various possessions of the murdered men, including Andrew Helgelian's coat and John Moe's watch. Beyond the charges of murder and arson, additional crimes loomed on the horizon. Furthermore, Sheriff Alfred Smutzer remained convinced that Belle was still alive and in hiding. A relentless pursuit to locate her was set in motion, but Belle seemed to vanish without a trace, leaving no discernible trail behind. Over time, Sheriff Smutzer, perhaps to safeguard his reputation, eventually altered his stance to the opposite, asserting that the newspapers had exaggerated the story about the escape of a dangerous serial killer. It's noteworthy to mention that later reports from witnesses claimed sightings of Gunness in the Chicago area, both 1 and even 3 years after her alleged demise. Law enforcement diligently explored each lead, yet none bore fruit in the apprehension of Belle. Confessions of a Spurned Man. As for Lamfer, he initially chose to remain silent. Given that the prosecutor could not furnish sufficient evidence linking Frank to the murders of the men, the children, and Belle herself, the court found him guilty solely of setting the farmhouse on fire. This verdict held the possibility of his eventual release in a few years. In November 1908, Lamfer was sentenced to prison. However, just 6 months later, he contracted tuberculosis, and his health deteriorated rapidly. On December 30, 1909, he passed away. Prior to his demise, he summoned a priest and made a confession, revealing the extent of his transgressions, which were many. In his confession, Frank acknowledged that he had occasionally aided Belle in disposing of bodies, although he vehemently denied being a direct perpetrator of the murders. He recounted how Belle would typically lure her victims into the basement, render them unconscious with chloroform, and then wield a butcher knife. Following this, Belle would either inter the bodies herself or instruct Lamfer to do so. Frank also disclosed the fate of the headless body discovered in the burned house, clarifying that it belonged to an unfortunate woman who had responded to an ad for a housekeeper. In contrast, the other bodies were identified as Belle's biological children, whom she had sedated with chloroform. Belle Gunness had harbored grand ambitions of fleeing with the substantial wealth she had accumulated over her lifetime. According to Lanfer's estimation, she possessed a considerable sum, at least $250,000, which would equate to over $6 million in today's currency. Strikingly, Sister Belle had always been fixated on amassing riches, yet the source of her wealth remained shrouded in mystery, known to none. Escape. In hindsight, it appears astonishing that despite the trail of fires and deaths that seemed to follow Belle from the moment she arrived in America, suspicions regarding her involvement in any of the crimes failed to materialize. Subsequent psychological analyses of Belle Gunness did not reveal signs of mental instability or psychopathy. Her principal motivation was money, and she displayed a readiness to go to great lengths to achieve her financial goals. Additionally, Belle exhibited a degree of caution and intelligence in her actions. Recognizing that a Slahel-Jellion's persistence and potential to expose her posed a threat, Belle devised a cunning plan. This plan aimed to facilitate her discreet escape with the money while simultaneously eliminating Frank, who had acquired knowledge that could implicate her. Belle made arrangements with Lanfer for him to set her house ablaze at a prearranged time, after which they would abscond together. However, the unsuspecting Frank failed to realize that Belle intended to flee without him, leaving behind a body resembling her in the cellar and her children in a drugged slumber. As dawn broke, Lanfer realized that Belle had deceived him. Surprisingly, Frank did not testify against his employer as a gesture of love. He chose to speak the truth only on his deathbed. Esther Carlson. Belle Gunness vanished without a trace, and her ultimate fate remains shrouded in mystery. While women bearing a resemblance to her were purportedly sighted across the country, and there are claims that it might have been her in a few instances, there is no definitive information about her whereabouts. For many years, there was speculation that Esther Carlson, a woman who succumbed to tuberculosis in prison in 1931, could have been Belle Gunness concealing her true identity. Esther shared several similarities with Belle and had a proclivity for murder, being responsible for at least 2 deaths. However, in 2014, researchers unearthed a record of Esther's first marriage in Connecticut dating back to 1907, coinciding with Belle's reign of terror in Indiana. This discovery debunked the theory, and once more, the true fate of Belle Gunness retreated into obscurity, as did the woman herself. It remains a tantalizing mystery, and we can only hope that one day, the final chapter of her story will be revealed. I hope you liked this story. Please don't forget to leave a comment sharing with your thoughts below. Give a thumbs up this video, and remember to hit that subscribe button to stay tuned for more captivating stories. Thank you for joining us on this remarkable journey, and we'll see you in the next video.